Hello, say Charat. Some people have a strange attitude. For example, they tell you that they want to start a new career, or learn a new language, or start a company, or move abroad. Sometimes they have a very detailed plan in their mind, but they haven't started put anything to practice. And then you ask them why they haven't started yet. And then they reply, oh, I just can't. I've got my son at home to look after. Well, okay. So a few years go by, then you ask the person how things are going and if they have done anything about their plan. And then the answer, yeah, you see, not yet. My son needs me. He takes a lot of my time. So several years go by, and the reply is always the same. I'm helping my son. I'm really busy. So eventually you lose your patience, and then you ask, well, wait, sir, how old is your son? He's going to be 35 this month. Do you know people like this? People who act this way, they're making a very common mistake. You might also be making the same mistake whether you have children or not. And this mistake causes you to stop living your own life because you're taking care of other people's irresponsibility. Today we'll learn and you understand how to avoid making this mistake and never let other people prevent you from reaching your maximum potential. Because if you don't establish clear boundaries, the needs of other people around you will take over your life. Dedication to friends and family is a great virtue. It is always good to have empathy, to help those who need it, to be available and contribute to the well-being of others. But the problem is that if you don't establish clear boundaries for yourself and others, the needs of your friends, relatives, and work colleagues will take over your life. And then there is no time or energy left for you to live your own life. And this is very common in relationships between parents and children. Many parents feel obliged to dedicate all their attention and time and energy to their children, but a healthy balance is necessary. Some parents have good intentions, but they make the mistake of doing everything their children want. They think that this will make their children give them more love. And this mistake also happens in other areas of life. For example, at work, helpful employees are often overloaded with the tasks of other co-workers. Colleagues, they take the advantage of this situation, becoming complacent and avoiding the more demanding tasks. Even among friends, one person who is more available than the average often ends up dedicating all their free time to everyone else. They are always the chosen ones to listen to other people's problems and even to solve them. If you have already experienced working from home, you probably already noticed this. People who live with you will say, since you are at home, could you do me this favor? Could you sort out this problem? Now, why does this happen? The main reason is that some people are simply incapable of saying no. But there are other reasons, and one of them is the fear of living one's own life. Being scared of living your own life makes you waste all your energy worrying about other people's lives. Let's go back now to the little story I told in the beginning of this conversation, the one about the parent who never had time for anything because he or she was too busy looking after their son, even when their son was 35 years old. In situations like this, are parents using their children to avoid living their own life? Isn't it convenient that this parent has the excuse of looking after their son so they don't have to do what they are scared of doing? Now, here's a warning. Don't get confused, please. We're not talking about caring for people who are legally incapacitated, people who have serious illnesses, people who have mental health disabilities. If the son here in this story is a healthy person and able to take care of himself, excessive care from a parent can be damaging. Relationships between adults must have healthy boundaries and allow each person to be responsible for their own choices. The fear from living one's own life can lead some people to dedicate all their time and energy solving other people's problems. This is concealing a weakness behind a mask of virtue. People want the world to see them as empathetic, benevolent, charitable. But these qualities are actually an insecurity in disguise, an incapacity to live our own lives. For example, imagine that the parent in this story is stuck in a job that he doesn't like. So the truth is that he wants to start his own business. But then he tells everyone he hasn't done it because he has a son to look after. so he can't afford to go without wages at the end of the month. This might seem responsible and cautious, but actually they're using the son as an excuse to not take action, to not do what needs to be done. Often, the parent is not even aware of this behavior. In other words, it is not intentional. But it doesn't matter whether the excuse was made on purpose or not, the fact remains the same. Using others as an excuse to not live life is a mistake that should be corrected. And this correction and other similar ones can only be made when you assume total responsibility for your own life. Take responsibility for setting boundaries. You are entirely to blame for your lack of spare time. It doesn't matter if you have kids who ask you to do things that they should be able to do on their own. It doesn't matter if you have colleagues who avoid doing difficult tasks and count on you to do their own work. It doesn't matter if you have friends who don't respect your time and always speak in never-ending monologues, gossiping and complaining about endless problems. See, if you are suffering from lack of time or lack of energy, it is entirely your fault. And the only way to improve this situation is to take full responsibility for it. First, you have to admit to yourself that it is your fault for letting other people's needs to take over your life. Only then you will be able to start acting to regain control of your time, of your own energy. And once this is clear, stop for a while and think whether your life is unbalanced. Try to notice how your time and energy are being used day by day. Is most of your time dedicated to solving other people's problems? Or do you have projects that you have not put into practice because you waste all your time and your energy on relatives and friends and work colleagues? Are you using other people's needs as an excuse to not living your own life? Now be honest with yourself. Once you have more clarity about how your time and energy are being used, then you can start finding some strategies to regain control. Often, all you need is just a few simple changes. For example, imagine that you're in a bad mood all day long because you're always doing the dishes. You're always washing your family members' dishes. Instead of feeling resentful, you can agree with everybody that from now on, everyone will wash their own dishes. Or you can assign different people to do the dishes on each day of the week. Sometimes you need more complex strategies. You might have to think about ways of giving more autonomy to your work colleagues, especially if you manage teams. Either way, it is always best to be clear about the current situation, and then you can plan and carry out actions that need to be taken in order to find more balance between dedicating your time and energy to your own activities and dedicating your time to other people's needs. And when you make this plan, you need to have honest conversations with many of the people who are consuming your time. And for those conversations to result in balance, you will need to learn how to say no. Learn how to say no to find the balance between helping others and taking care of your own life. And many people find it very difficult to say no. We often say yes to everything so that we don't come across as rude, insensitive, or self-centered. And we end up overloaded with an unhealthy amount of work to do. And when you don't know how to say no, other people keep giving you more and more tasks. With no clear boundaries, other people's needs start to invade your own life to the point that you have no time or energy to dedicate to your own needs. If this continues for long, you end up with health problems, burnout syndrome, or simply a lot of frustration because you can't manage to dedicate yourself to your own dreams. And to change this, learn how to say no. This doesn't mean being rude or impolite or insensitive. It just means having a serious conversation with whomever asks you for a favor, explaining very clearly and respectfully why you can't help on this occasion. And during such conversations, try to show how the person can solve the problem without your help. Or try to direct them towards someone else who is available to help. And by doing this, you can say no and be helpful while also protecting your own time. Are you looking after a lot of 30-year-old sons? If you feel overloaded and if you can't find time or energy to work on your personal projects, maybe your life is being invaded by the needs of other people. The best way to solve this problem and restore balance in your life is to take responsibility for the problem, set clear boundaries, and learn to say no. Knowing how to say no in the right way without hurting other people's feelings. This is so important that Arata Academy has an exclusive training about it. Right now you can watch a special lesson from the How to Say No course with 3 tips for communicating in an assertive, firm, and polite way. And to watch the lesson you can go to arata.se/how to say no.